The weather this winter has been brutally cold and windy, so why not stay indoors with some hearty chili? The 5th annual Chili Cook-Off is happening at Sonny's Pizza on February 23rd. Attendees will get to sample over 10 varieties of chili, all from local Georgia Avenue small businesses. RSVP for free or grab a VIP pass, which includes early entry, guaranteed chili tastings, and other perks. Again, that's the 5th annual Chili Cook-Off at Sonny's Pizza. That's in Columbia Heights on Georgia Avenue between Irving and Kenyon, and it's on February 23rd. Today on CityCast DC, we're talking about a new congressional bill to repeal DC's home rule, which hits just as the region is obsessing about what the campaign against federal workers is going to do to our local economy. This isn't actually a new thing for Republicans to try, but the bill's name this time definitely ups the sass. Plus, we're talking about the union push in a bunch of high-end DC restaurants, and for something fun, what to bring to your Super Bowl party. I'm here with Washingtonians Jessica Sidman and CityCast's Julia Karen. Today is Friday, February 7th. I'm Michael Schaefer, and here's what DC's talking about. Hey, Jess.
Hi, Mike.
Awesome to see you.
Nice to see you.
Hey, Julia.
Hey, Mike.
So, hey, guys, there was news yesterday, as I guess there is every day this week. A federal judge in Massachusetts has put a hold on what he called the fork directive, meaning that the so-called buyout offer for feds that has been looming with the deadline of yesterday. We don't quite know what's going to happen. What does this mean for people who've already taken it? Where does it go from here? There's going to be more court proceedings next week. Pretty wild.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy. And I keep getting this question from friends about why is this taking so long? Why is this taking so long? And I cannot stress enough. Legal land takes time. These unions basically are saying that Trump isn't allowed to do this legally. And so they're coming up with these arguments, and the judges are finally getting around to it and hitting pause is what's happening.
That's going to ruin the weekends of a lot of employment lawyers out there. But in the meantime, again, I don't know, what about you guys? Is this a thing that has been dominating your neighborhood talks too?
It's literally the talk of the bus stop. I live in Northern Virginia, so a lot of my neighbors, a lot of the parents at my kids' schools are federal employees, and I hear them every morning and afternoon freaking out about return to work, will they have a job, these deferred resignations. So you can just feel it in the air, just being out and about.
All right, Mike, I don't know about you, but I'm the journalist friend of my friend group. So I'm the one that's plugged in and knows everything that's going on and is telling my friends what's happening. And during our 9 to 5, right, we're talking about this for the show. And then when you're supposed to log off and take a break, it's all my friends can talk about is there's text after text after text of did you see this crazy thing that happened? Is this even allowed? What are we doing?
And then also, look at Mike Lee, senator from Utah, Andy Ogles, congressman from Tennessee, longtime critics of D.C. They'd previously, during the Biden years, called for the end of home rule. They've actually introduced a bill to do that, to return D.C. to congressional control so that your complaints about garbage or potholes or schools would go to them. It's the kind of thing I think a lot of us in D.C. will find immensely insulting. The rest of Americans get to control their own destiny, but apparently not Washington. And given that there's still a filibuster, I think it's a very unlikely thing to have happen. All the same, just seeing it in print, particularly what they called the bill, is pretty jarring.
Listen, calling it the Bringing Oversight to Washington and Safety to Every Resident Act, and if you acronym that up, it's the Bowser Act. I get it. It's sneaky. It's funny. I get it. It's a shot across the bow. I get it.
Yeah. And again, it's very, very, very unlikely this becomes law. And I think it's very unlikely even that these guys want it to become law, because the last thing you want to go tell your constituents, if you are an elected member from anywhere other than the District of Columbia, is that you have spent your days focusing on the District of Columbia. They
yes.
did not get sent up here to deal with dog poop in Ward 3 or other city level things.
Oh, no. My thing about this is that this legislation to me, and Mike, tell me if I'm reading this wrong, but the whole point of this legislation is to cause chaos, which is kind of the modus operandi of what's going on right now, cause a ruckus, get us talking about it, when actually House Republicans only have they barely have a majority. Like, they've had the slimmest majority since the Great Depression. Like, come on.
I think it's actually even simpler than that. This is like you can go home and tell your constituents, oh, I beat up on those, blue liberals in Washington, haha. And you can kind of take the vote without ever having to actually do anything about it. So that's kind of the vibe. And look, a lot of other incredible things are happening right now, things that you would have been dismissed as a nutcase for saying just 6 months ago, like they're going to abruptly shutter USAID. So I don't want to lose sight of the current reality of the moment. But I think the bigger impact for people in DC is, it's sort of just like a lot of these looming cuts, the buyouts if they get started again, the sudden shuttering of this agency or that agency, despite we thought we needed a law to do that, but we don't. It's creating a kind of a sense, of just like a disorienting sense of like collapse. But there's sort of the immediate thing of like, well, what's going to happen to these workers? A lot of them are, neighbors, friends, people we know. But then there's the sort of second order thing, is what I wrote about in my Politico column, which is like, what does this mean for the rest of us? Or, are all these people, if they lose their jobs, they're not going to be able to find a new one here. They're going to flee. They're going to sell their house immediately in a fire sale. It's going to plummet all of our home prices that, we're counting on to protect us in our retirement. The vibe is like a company town when the company that they thought was never going to go out of business is suddenly, it seems like it's in trouble. I called a bunch of economists and, people who sort of track the broad health of this region. And, it's sort of like I got two different and rather contrasting answers. On the one hand, for people who just look at stats, none of this shows up in the stats yet. Even this sort of deferred resignation thing, it literally wouldn't show up in unemployment data until September. And then the other thing they say is, look, this is a very big region. It's a region of 6 million people. And they say that if the Trump administration eliminated 20% of the DC area federal jobs, it would double the local unemployment. It's 2.8% now, which is an amazingly good number, to 5.5%, which is, not a total disaster. But there's also all this money that would go to contracts and contractors that when they can't make payroll, they'll have to cut people. So in the big economy, even sort of the worst case scenario from the point of view of people who don't want this to happen might not be enough to completely crater a rather large region. So that's the good news part I hear. The
The thing that we're waiting on is the bad news,
It's not the apocalypse, so.
But
so the other thing, I talked to a person who's been a headhunter for a long time. He places people in, from the government, often rather senior people in private sector jobs when they're ready to leave and move on. And, we said, look, we've got a lot of these people hitting the job market. They've got a lot of skills. If you're an AID employee and you can deliver a bunch of vaccines to South Sudan, you've probably got some logistical skills that someone's going to want somewhere. But not clear if that somewhere is here. And the bigger picture is this sort of insulting, horrifically insulting treatment of federal workers. But one person put it this way: it's sort of a violation of the basic bargain that brings a lot of people to work in Washington, first in the government, and then they go into, nonprofits or private sector, which is all right, you take maybe less money than you would make if you were trying to maximize your income in the Wall Street private sector. But in exchange for that, you get meaningful work in the public's interest, and you get security and stability. And a lot of people that find that a very attractive bargain. But what's happened is the security gets stripped away this week, and the sense of mission, public service, similarly. And take that away, and it's why would I take that deal? Why would I live someplace so expensive as DC? Why don't I take myself to Cincinnati or Nashville or whatever? And this person said, well, in the long run, that's the danger thing, that this sort of shuts off the funnel of cool, interesting, and frankly economically dynamic new people coming here. That's not going to show up in stats anytime soon, But and I thought that was a really interesting dynamic.
Yeah. I mean, to me, like, the chaos and the instability is kind of the point of all this. And realistically, if the mission of serving the greater good doesn't rise to the level of like that much importance, if every day you're freaking out over potentially getting an email from a 22-year-old saying like, you're fired, Joe Schmo, that kind of sucks. And that's really disheartening.
Right. So like the DC government, their view is like, look, we were already trying to diversify. Anyone who looks at the federal workforce knows this is a rather old workforce. A lot of these people were going to be hitting retirement age fairly soon anyway. We were already sort of aware that we needed to have a city whose sort of base is built on more things. They play up like, cybersecurity, defense tech, health tech. I suspect a lot of those industries, you scratch like a half inch beneath the surface and there's still a lot of government money involved in making the thing work. So, it's not quite the same as like selling some random widget. But there's another point of view of like what's happening just sort of hits fast forward on trends that we're probably already going to have to be there anyway. I just think that this change of like a thing that people thought was certain, right? To the government. It would always be there, it would spend money. Even if you didn't work for it, you sort of knew that enough people did it, you counted on it. And then all of a sudden, like, this sense of permanence is gone, and that really messes with people's heads. I don't think America is going to be shedding a lot of tears for us, but I think that's going to be like a defining thing of, even if this all stopped like right now, because this thing that a lot of people thought would never go away is now like, it can go away. Maybe it will go away. And that's pretty huge, man.
Can I have your attention, please? Yes, hi, Wanda Sykes here. You ever think about all the nicknames we have for breasts? Boobs, tatas, the girls, chesticles, bubbies. Heck, you might even have your own nickname for them. And yet, even though they get so much attention, they're still so ignored when it matters most. What's up with that? Well, on February 9th, tune in to see why I'm talking so much about breasts and visit yourattentionplease.com to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
So Jess, you did reporting this. Can we just like, let's move past this, but it's actually like not past this, because you did reporting this week on a union push at a bunch of upscale DC restaurants. And the restaurant industry is one of these things people think of as an emblem of how this is a really prosperous area, and people are able to go out to like Le Diplomat and Pastis and Russica, and the union push is sort of, from part of the optics of it, or the rhetoric of it, is like based on that. It's like, look, you've got these people, these restaurants selling incredibly expensive meals, and why don't you make it a little bit better for the people who are preparing and serving those meals? What is the state of play with this? And because it suddenly became a controversy this week.
Yeah. So just as a little background, there are 5 different restaurants from 2 big name restaurateurs that simultaneously all announced plans to try to unionize. We've got Le Diplomat, St. Anselm Pastis from Steven Starr, and Russica Penn Quarter location, and Modena, which is an Italian restaurant from Ashok Bajaj and his Knightsbridge restaurant group. And really, a union push of this size in the restaurant industry in DC is unprecedented. If they are successful, this would represent 500 workers front and back of house in DC restaurants. And, traditionally, or I guess, historically, in modern history, there have not been a lot of unions in restaurants. And I think part of that has to do with how transitory the industry is. And also, for servers, bartenders, they make the bulk of their pay from not their employer, but from the diner, from tips. So I think that's also a complicating factor, and maybe why we haven't traditionally seen as many unions. But I do think the pandemic really changed things in a lot of ways, and it laid bare how tough this industry can be. I mean, I think, there are some tough realities. And you've even seen it enshrined in pop culture, right? With like the screaming chef and things like that. And people saw that they were expendable during the pandemic. They lost their jobs at the drop of a hat, and I think it kind of awoke something in a lot of workers, and that's a little bit of what's behind this push.
Where does this stand? I'm getting served a lot of ads, like calling out the Knightsbridge group. That's Ashok Bajaj's group. I guess Google hasn't caught up with how much of a homebody I've become. It still serves me things like that. So they have announced this push, have succeeded. What are the next steps?
Yeah, so neither restaurant group plans to voluntarily recognize these unions. And there have been a lot of allegations thrown around. And workers for some of the restaurants are saying that they are facing intimidation and retaliation for their union involvement. Some of the more serious allegations at Rasica, where workers there claim that 3 employees were fired for their involvement in the unions. The owner has said these allegations are false, that this is a defamatory smear campaign, and the workers have filed complaints with the National Labor Relations Board. And then at Star restaurants, they've also filed, labor law violation charges on things like supervisors allegedly interrogating employees about the union and telling them they're going to be stricter with them, or that this will change, quote unquote, dismissal rules. Star restaurants, on the other hand, saying, these are just union tactics. They're going to fight vigorously, defend themselves against these allegations. So, I guess we'll see what happens. There are elections slated, at least for the Star restaurants, and potentially others forthcoming. And ultimately, workers will vote about whether they want to form these unions or not.
So how does these 2 union pushes compare to some of the other ones we've seen? Like, we've seen one from Union Kitchen, we've seen one from Compass Coffee. Like, where in the mix does this stand?
I don't want to speak out of turn because I haven't followed up on some of the other cases as closely, but I think, similarly, you've seen pushback from the businesses against these unions, and, a lot, especially like Compass Coffee, there were a lot of nasty allegations about people being fired, or them hiring huge amounts of workers to kind of flood the zone, if you will, and still a lot of uncertainty, as far as I understand, about what will happen there.
I'm curious, like, what does a unionized restaurant look like? I don't know if there's other groups in the area that have strong unions, but like on the day-to-day, like for the workers, but also for the diners, how does it change the way the place works?
Yeah, so there are restaurant unions in the DC area. I think it's much more common in hotel restaurants. So, for example, the Bazaar by Jose Andres, the Waldorf Astoria, the workers there are unionized. And Dogon from Chef Kwame near the wharf, they are also unionized. And, again, I haven't done a lot of reporting to ask workers there, like, what is their daily life like? But, I think the idea of it is that why they want to be part of that is, like, they feel like it gives them a certain level of respect. It gives them power to deal with situation, it gives them a voice to deal with situations when they feel like they're having problems, a platform to negotiate on their salaries and benefits. And, like the Bazaar one, Jose actually did voluntarily recognize that one.
And then on the customer side, like, do you see any difference in service?
I've been to Dogon. The service is excellent. So, but I've also, been to some of these restaurants that are unionizing and the service is excellent. You do hear the argument that, like, service is worse at places that are unionized. I don't know that that's a universal truth in any way, shape, or form.
But it's like hard to not think about the political context here. At this moment, the Trump administration has pushed a lot of people out of the National Labor Relations Board, particularly given that like restaurants are historically, like, as you say, like kind of an unusual place to unionize. That affects, I assume, how the campaign goes, and particularly how much consequence people face for doing things that aren't allowed. But there's also the like Washington is, a city, a very blue city. Something like busting a union is the kind of thing that would cause people to like boycott a restaurant or not go there, or say, that seems kind of ugly, let's stay away from it. On the other hand, it's a moment when the sort of resistance vibe seems really, absent. People are sort of lying down, the unrolling of DEI or whatever, like things that people very recently got up in the streets about. Is there a sense that people are going to that Knightsbridge or Star are like worrying, like, boy, if we handle this wrong, a bunch of our customers are going to say like nothing doing?
Yeah, I mean, I have definitely heard, this is totally anecdotally just on social media, people who are saying, oh, I don't want to eat there if they're union busting. But, also I would definitely want to point out that the workers themselves are saying, please don't boycott our businesses. And they're actually encouraging people to go to these establishments. And, if they want to voice their opinion or concerns, voice their support to the staff there. But they have specifically so far said, please don't boycott these restaurants.
You found your person. Now let the Knot help you with everything else. The Knot connects you to the wedding inspo, vendors, venues, and planning tools you need to make your day totally you. Having helped plan 25 million weddings, we've got your back when it comes to every little detail like RSVPs, budgets, and more. Because your wedding comes to life with the connections that matter the most. Get started at theknot.com/audio. The Knot. Let's plan your wedding together.
All right, so probably at the other end of the restaurant and hospitality spectrum, because I don't assume that there's like, special programming at Pastis for the Super Bowl.
You never know.
You never know. Julia's our sports maven at CityCast, and you've been pulling together Super Bowl deals. No Commanders in the Super Bowl, but there's plenty of Philadelphia fans in DC, and even in my household, not me. And Jez, I'd love to hear your thoughts too, because restaurants do always try to like take advantage of special days on the calendar. I don't know if they do it successfully or not, but Julia, like what's out there this year?
Yeah. So I view the Super Bowl as an excuse to basically see friends and drink beer and then eat wings or chili or something like that. Like that, it's an excuse to do that, is my view. I host a Super Bowl party. For me, it's an excuse to cook for my friends. I typically will cook like a sheet pan of nachos or like wings or something like that. I don't know about you guys if you are like big into hosting or anything like that, but that is the vibe that I tend to go for. So the question that I typically pose to people if they have any interest in this is, do you want to go out or do you want to stay in? So if you are hosting, there's a bunch of options for like, if you don't actually want to cook, if you're not like a Julia Child, Martha Stewart, homebody person, there are plenty of options. So like Astro Donuts has a Super Bowl combo pack. Astro Beer Hall also has that as well. Call Your Mother has a pre-order option for catering for bagel sandwiches. 250 Barbecue has this awesome deal. They have slots open for takeout until they run out. Basically, there's multiple options for specials that vary on the types and like quantities of meat and for how many people. Additionally, our newsletter writer, Kayla, pulled together a list for us as well. And in terms of take-home stuff, Blue Jacket has a couple of take-home packages, the largest of which can feed 15 people. It includes 50 chicken wings, house-made tater tots, chips and dip, 25 sliders, and pretzel bites. It says it serves 5 to 15 people. If you are 5 people and you are eating that, I have questions. How many growing boys in your family do you have, is my question.
What else is hot on that list?
Ooh, so if you want to go to stuff in person, I cannot stress this enough. You need to make your reservations beforehand. I know DC typically is a bunch of sometimes type A people who like to plan stuff ahead of time. I cannot stress enough. You really do need to plan because slots run out. But if you're going out, Bryant Street Market is having a wing cook-off competition and a watch party. The tickets vary from $12 to $18. Duffy's is going to have unlimited beer of your choice for $50. Additionally, all of the Capitol Riverfront restaurants, so that's like Sands Social Club, Atlas Brewworks. We talked about Navy Yard having a to-go thing. They're also doing it in person. They also have a whole bunch of deals. I cannot stress enough. Please, please, please put your reservations in advance. The same thing goes for takeout, too. Jess, of any of the options, do you have a favorite? What do you do for the Super Bowl as a food writer? Do you go and like grade these places when they do this stuff?
$2.50 deal sounded great to me. I love their barbecue. It's so, so good. I'm going to get canceled for saying like I don't really watch sports. So
Let me ask you this, though. You cover restaurants. When restaurants put on like specials for like a big day to try to take advantage, particularly with some people taking out, like is the stuff like, is that their best work? Or is it kind of like, all right, let's see what we can do on the cheap to take advantage of people being really eager to have stuff for their party?
I don't know that's necessarily taking advantage, but like...
That's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. Is it?
No, I mean, you know, like the Super Bowl, if you're a sports bar, the Super Bowl is literally like your Super Bowl.
It's Oscar night.
It's Oscar's night. Yeah, exactly.
Right? So, you know, they're going to go all out. They want to offer some fun stuff.
Julia, did my invite to your Super Bowl party get lost in the mail? What happened?
I don't know, man. I need to find it.
I mean,
I gotta figure it out.
It's just gone missing. Me.
Y'all are invited. Again, if you want to see Kayla's full list of everywhere you can get specials. Again, if you're not a chef like me, go to dc.citycast.fm and you can get food to go, or you can go somewhere where they have bigger TVs and better food that you can cook at home.
Well, thank you, Julia.
Thanks, Mike.
And Jess, awesome to see you.
Likewise. Thank you.
And that is all for today here on CityCast DC. Our production team this week was Priyanka Tilve, Julia Karen, and Ash Durbin. Newsletter editor Kayla Cote-Stemmerman writes our fabulous newsletter, Hey DC. And our hosts are Bridget Todd and me, Michael Schaefer from Politico. Music is by Alex Roldan. If you enjoyed the show, text your friend who's planning a Super Bowl meal. Tell them all about it. We'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. Bye.